Austin, I'm taking over the show today. Wanted to have you on and just kind of talk about life, talk about how we know each other, talk about what you do and who you are. So let's dive in. Tell the audience who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So moved to Birmingham about a decade ago, and right out of college, and started working for a landscape company here in town, a bigger landscape company. We were all over the Southeast, and I was on the financial side, and I worked there for 7 years. And so about year 6 to 7, I realized it was kind of my time to leave the landscape world, and it was honestly just a leap of faith for me. I had no clue what my next step was. I just knew that I was supposed to leave, but I didn't know what that looked like afterwards. And the only thing I had been doing at the time was trading options in the stock market. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give this thing a try, just give it 100% of my time and see what I can do. And so I tried that for about a year and a half and realized, really honestly, just understood a lot about myself going through that season, and understood that I'm an extrovert and I'm behind a computer all day, every day looking at stock charts. Didn't honestly love that. Yeah. And so really two things I learned in the stock market was learn about myself, about what I liked and what I didn't like. And then the second thing is I realized I really didn't have a competitive advantage for what my unique skill set was that I felt like that I brought to the market inside of the stock market. Because I had a MacBook and a charter internet connection while hedge fund managers are sitting around the table with billionaires trying to figure out where they're going to push money. And so I really didn't have a big competitive advantage in that world. And so I just decided to try to pivot from there and see what my next steps were. And along that journey is when I actually met a guy named Phil Mazer, who started a company about 6 years ago called CFO Mission. And he was a fractional CFO outsourced accounting firm for property managers. And so I worked with him. Basically, we just met at a cafe one day in our church, and just kind of hit it off from day one. And I was working on stocks, he was working on building his business, and we just became friends, started running together, and just tried to hang out a good bit. And then he just said, hey man, if you ever want to help me build this business, let's do it. And so that was kind of in that middle of that year and a half phase of me doing stocks. And that's when I was kind of like, man, should I continue doing this? I'm just isolated by myself, and Phil's wanting to build this business, and I'm very intrigued by just small businesses in general. And so from there, just started working with him, just a few hours a week. That led more into half my week. That led more into basically working for him full time and running the operations for him while he was trying to grow the business and head up sales and that kind of deal.
How big was the company when you joined at that time? As far as number of people, I guess, were you working alongside a lot of people during that time?
Yeah, so we had, I guess there was 4 of us full time at that point. I was kind of that third person that came on, and then we hired an additional person after me. So it's 5 full time, and then we actually had a team of virtual assistants that did a lot of the clerical, day-to-day task management type stuff. Okay. And so that team was probably anywhere from 6 to 7 people, and then we had the 5 full-timers.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, going in. And so from there, I can talk about this all day.
Yeah,
so.
Come on, I love it.
But from there, just working with Phil, we were, growing the business, and I was loving it. And like I said, he was doing the sales side, I was doing the operations side, and I just kind of put the bug in his ear last year that, hey man, if you ever consider selling this business, I would love to buy the business. And so I think he was thrown off a little bit at first because he had never thought that that's kind of like what the direction I was going. And I knew that ultimately I wanted to do my own thing. I just didn't know what that looked like. And so I kind of talked to him about that, and a few months went by, and he came back to me and he was like, hey man, let's have that conversation again about selling the business. And so we went through that whole process of doing that. I'm, happy to share whatever you want to know.
Yeah,
about
I want
that
to talk
process,
about that, but I mean, that's a big deal, right?
Yep.
I mean, buying a business, that concept is newer to me, and it derived a little bit from how we met, which we'll get into that in a little bit. But I mean, there's got to be a lot of nerves around that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was, once again, we started with the friendship first, right? Yeah. And then we led into being like business friends. And so the biggest thing what my viewpoint walking into that was, I don't want anything to like put a wedge between our friendship. To me, the relationship came first and the business came second. As much as I desired to buy that business because I loved it and learned about it over working with them for 2 years and understanding it, I didn't want to do anything that kind of like jeopardized the relationship. And so he knew that, I knew that, and we had become such good friends that we thought similarly. It was just like, it was never really like this, kind of like, I don't want to talk to him about this kind of thing. We were just always open along the whole way. But it was nerve-wracking because like I had never done anything like that before, right?
Right.
I mean, it was just something that I've listened to a bunch of podcasts about and trying to become somewhat knowledgeable about how to evaluate businesses. And I got to do that a little bit in the landscape world because we were acquiring a bunch of smaller landscape companies when we were building that business. And so I had a little bit of knowledge there, but it was still just this, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Let's just figure this thing out.
Yeah. So when you were with the landscaping company, you were on the accounting and numbers side. So you got to see how the finances worked when you purchased a smaller company. So you had some experience with that side of it.
Yep, exactly.
And then I guess being an outsourced accounting company, it's literally your job to understand the numbers. So if you're purchasing a company, for yourself, then that's the first thing you look at.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so the landscape company was owned by an investment group here in town. And so I got to see what they cared about as an investment firm owning a landscape company, right? Just by I was an employee by the landscape company, but I got to see what they cared about. And so I saw what markets they were interested in, how they evaluated businesses, how they talked with business owners and what they put a value. I mean, they would come in and put a value on their business and basically say, yeah, or nay, right? And so I got to see and be a part of that, which kind of led into me taking that experience and knowledge into a whole different industry, but you can still evaluate businesses similarly. Yeah.
Okay. So you go in, you have the conversation. He's open to it. Give me a time frame on how long this takes place from the initial, hey, I'm interested. You said a couple months went by and let's say revisit this to ultimately, spoiler alert, but purchasing the company, right? What does that look like?
So we were doing our 2023 planning for the company in December of 22, and that's when I just put that bug in his ear. I was like, "Hey, I'd love to buy the business. Have you ever thought about that?" And then I would say it was March. I think it was March of this year, where he came back and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing something different, and I'd love to reconsider, possibly selling this business to you." So we started having those conversations in March. And so I think we ended up, really the next step after that, when he came to me, he said, "Listen, I have a specific number in my mind of what I think the business is worth, but you go do your homework and see what the business is worth to you, and then let's meet again." And so I did that. And we've been in a group together for probably 6 months or longer before that date.
Yeah.
And so I was asking you a bunch of questions, and we were getting together just trying to figure out, like, okay, what do I even do here? And so I came back in, tried to pull some of that experience from the landscape world to evaluate that business. And we went back and forth probably 3 to 4 times before we came to an agreement on what we thought the business was worth that we both agreed to. And so, I mean, I'm happy to dive into kind of how I evaluated the business. But
yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And then kind of from a 30,000 foot view, what went into that, just kind of from a mental and like emotional standpoint. Again, that's to me initially sounds very overwhelming of buying a business, and there's just so many moving pieces. And so I want to hear about that as well. But yeah, if you want to touch on that first.
Yeah, for sure. So the way we went in, there's 2 ways in my mind that you can evaluate really small businesses. The first one is just a percentage of revenue, right? So like a lot of times small businesses, this is why I love the accounting space, because a lot of small businesses don't have a clue if their books are accurate or not. So if you go in there and look at a P&L statement, you have no clue if the profit is actually accurate or not. So you're like, man, if these books aren't accurate, I can't actually put a true evaluation on this. So a lot of people, and this is what we ended up doing in the landscape world, was you just do a percentage of what their top line revenue was. Like, what is their contractual revenue, and we're going to offer them a percentage of that. And so that's one way to do it. The way I did it with Phil, because we knew the books were accurate, because we're accounting firm,
It's your job.
is that I knew what the profit was. So the other option of evaluating businesses, and this is probably what you hear more in like the stock market world or the bigger public companies, is they do a percentage or a multiple of EBITDA, which is earnings for interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And so that's what I ended up doing because I knew the true profit of the business, and I just did a multiple of that based on what I thought was a fair market value for that business. And so, and what was your second question?
Just from a high level, the mental and emotional state going through that, because you're married,
Yeah.
right? And so you've got a family that you're also taking care of and balancing, and that's a whole new set of risks and a new endeavor. So what, just from a approach from that standpoint, what would that look like?
So you're exactly right. So my wife is very, I guess, conservative and consistent, and I'm more of the let's go try things and do all that kind of stuff. But one thing that I'm super grateful for, because she works a job, and actually all of our benefits, healthcare, all of that stuff come through her job. So we have the ability to go to kind of take risks, like trying the stock market thing and trying these things where there's no benefits of like that most people feel security in when you go to try these things. So it's given me a little bit of the freedom that maybe some other people don't have, that we can go try different things, knowing that she still has a salary coming in and she has health care if anything drastic happens, right? So it gave me a little bit of peace knowing that, but it was still, like you said, very nerve-wracking, because I was looking at these numbers and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to take on debt to purchase the company, right? And so I could purchase this company, and the way our business works is it's just month to month. There's no contractual agreements with our clients. So it's like if we have to show up every month to provide you a good service, and if we're not, then you can dip out, and we understand. We want that freedom for our clients.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, man, I could take the reins of this thing, and 2 months in, they could all dip, and I'm like, have this big note I got to pay.
Yeah.
And no clients. I got to figure out what to do with it. So that was probably the biggest nerve-wracking thing for me. So when I looked at the numbers, I was comfortable giving a multiple of EBITDA where I didn't want to have a loan extend out more than 24 months. And that's really what I shot to do, is that say, okay, I know I got to get a loan out for this, but if I can make it 24 months, then the business is paid for free and clear, and then I can go from there. I don't want to extend something out where, especially when people are month to month, going 5 years, 10 years, extending out a note that way. So I wanted that number to be on that 24-month range.
Yeah. So you kind of look at what's worst case, and let's mitigate our risk as much as possible. And hey, maybe our return for the next 24 months isn't as sexy as it could be, but after that, it's just going to be that much better.
That's exactly right.
And our risk is much less lower.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, from a business owner, I would much rather take in less money just as profit from the business that's actually paying me to pay that loan down quicker, right, and then be able to kind of propel myself into the next season with no debt.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love about how you structured this, is that the discipline for delayed gratification, right? And that's so hard. One, because there's risk in that, like your cash flow is lower. You've got an opportunity with Sam helping you out on. Or helping your family out just from a survival standpoint, right? And that is, some people would say, oh, well, I don't have that opportunity, so I couldn't do that. But I think taking that risk, instead of you've got a comfortable job, you're skilled, you could go get hired and just have a 9 to 5 forever and be fine and comfortable. But taking that risk and taking that step, because the potential of what it could be is just so high. And man, I love that you did that. I love that you just took that risk and you put yourself out there to just say, look, I'm made, and this resonates with me. Like I'm made for more than just punching a clock and going to do something. Like I want to build something that can have lasting effect on more than just me.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? No, I fully agree with that. And honestly, being with you during this whole season, I mean, you were with me along the way of buying this business. And one of the things, I mean, we've all probably heard this 1,000 times, but you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? And so me seeing what you do with your life encouraged me to take bigger steps of faith in my life, just because I'm like, well, if Blake's doing it, I kind of want to do it too. You know, I'm seeing him do things, even though we're in different industries. Yeah, I'm seeing him do things that are putting risk on the table to go do stuff to, propel his family forward and propel his career forward and do all these things. So it gave me kind of courage to do that as well. And so when you get around like-minded individuals like we do on Thursdays, it's so much of a bigger benefit than I ever imagined possible, just by hearing what other people are doing, that just encourages everybody in the group, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a game changer for me.
Yeah, like you said, that's been said, and everyone's heard it so many times. But actually, to live out surrounding yourself with people that make you better, and really reflecting on where you're spending your time, who you're spending your time with. I mean, we're living that out, and I want to talk about that group in a minute, and just all the growth we've seen, not just in our businesses, but just in other people in the group as well. And it's not a huge group. That's just been super impactful. So I do want to talk about that, but I can't let this opportunity pass to not tie in what you're doing to real estate, since this is a real estate podcast. And you've got some real estate we're going to talk about at the end of this, but it's so similar when you're talking about evaluating this company. You're looking at look at the gross income or the revenue, right? So if my mind goes to an apartment complex. So what's the potential rent coming in? What are the expenses? And is the seller, if I'm looking to buy it, are they telling me the correct expenses? So I've got to verify that I know what the NOI is, or I know what the profit is, and then basing an offer or evaluation off of those numbers. It's the same thing, right? Different
exactly
industry,
right.
but exact same thing. And so I love that. So people are, when you're trying to analyze buying a business or buying some real estate, it's the same process, which is pretty simple. Income minus expenses, there's your value, right? You just got to just verify that all those are correct. I love that. All right, so how did we meet, right? I think we had lunch with, was it Josh or Josh? Josh?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Josh connected us. I can't remember how you and Josh met, but Josh and I had been friends. We've been friends for 3+ years, I guess now. And he just called me up one day. He was like, man, I got this friend, Blake. We got to go get lunch. And he's a great connector. I mean, Josh is an awesome. I feel like that's his passion in life, is just to connect people. And so
shout out Josh.
Yeah. And so so the three of us got lunch down in Homewood, I guess. And that's really where I was super interested, because we had just done the Irondale house.
Yeah.
And I was like coming off this high of like saying, this actually worked.
So what is the Irondale house? Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so I, like everybody, had been listening to Bigger Pockets for years and never did anything with it, right? And so was doing that while working the different jobs that I had been working, and was interested, started to get more and more interested in real estate. So I started to get on some wholesaler lists of just like saying, okay, what are houses in Birmingham going for, kind of off market, that kind of deal. And I had become very interested in the Airbnb space versus the long-term rental space. And so that was kind of my first stab to say, like, I'm actually going to start paying attention to these wholesaler emails and see what happens if we can do something. So essentially got an email from a wholesaler on an Irondale house, and Sam and I, my wife and I, went and looked at it, built in 1920, loved the area, loved the house, and saw big potential for it being a Airbnb because it's 10 minutes from downtown, and had a good little community over there. And so we bought the house with the basically thought of, let's make this thing an Airbnb. So actually halfway through the renovation, so bought the house. It was in decent shape, but just needed some lipstick, basically. Made it look pretty. And so we started redoing the bathroom, redoing the kitchen, and all these things. And halfway through the renovation, the city of Irondale actually outlawed Airbnbs because of an incident there.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, shoot, our whole plan was to do Airbnb. Like, what are we going to do? And so by law in Irondale, it's 30-day minimum night stay.
Okay.
And so I just started doing some research, because I was like, I still think there's like an opportunity for a shorter term rental than just the 12-month traditional lease. And so we started doing research and found this platform called Furnish Finder, which caters towards medical staffing or like travel nurses.
Okay.
And so that was the route we ended up going. So we stayed the course, furnished the whole furnished the whole house, and listed it both on Furnish Finder and then on Airbnb, just with a minimum 30-night stay. And it's done fantastic since then. So
That's awesome. Can we talk about numbers on it?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'd love to know purchase, renovation, kind of monthly expenses, kind of walk through what that is. And then kind of going into it, when was this? Were you still just day trading? Were you with Phil at this point? Where were you in your career?
It was right in between me still doing some stock market stuff, working with Phil kind of part-time, and then filling the rest of my time over at the Irondale house.
Can't sit still. I love it. Yeah.
But yeah, from a number standpoint, we bought the house for $142, and we put right at about $50 into it.
Okay.
And so,
and you do that with private money, with a bank loan?
So bought the house with private money.
Okay.
And then basically used our savings to renovate.
Okay.
And then right after we did that, we financed it basically. And so once again, I've heard about this Burr method thing
I was
on
just
Bigger
about to say
Pockets
that's
for
a Burr,
forever.
right?
And I'm like, okay, is this Burr thing actually real? And we tried it and it worked. I mean, it was the craziest thing walking away from the bank saying, everything we just put into this house, I have in a check right here that's going right back in
I love
our
it. So
bank.
for those who don't know, break down what a Burr is.
Yeah, I'm see if I can remember the acronym, but it's buy, renovate, rent, repeat, maybe?
Refinance, repeat.
Refinance,
Yeah.
repeat. Yeah, miss another R.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
So
that's
you bought it, you renovated it, you put a tenant in, essentially with furnished finder short, kind of midterm rental, I guess. Went to the bank, said, hey, we've got enough equity in here where you'll fund a certain percentage, maybe 80, 85% of the value, and that was enough to get all your money back?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're in this zero basis.
That's right.
No cash in.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So, and once again, I'd heard about it probably 1,000 times on the Bigger Pocket podcast, and I was like, "Is this thing actually work?" And it worked.
Yeah.
And so
what do the numbers look like today?
yeah, so the house averages. So it's probably a 60% split from Airbnb guests and a 40% split with furnished finder guests.
Okay.
And what we're seeing, just for reference, is Airbnb has got the 30-night minimum stay. So we see that people average stay there between 30 and 45 days. But with Furnished Finder, most hospitals do like a 3-month contract. So we actually like those better because they come in and stay for about 3 months or 3 to 4 months and rent the house that way. So we're averaging about just under $3,000 a month in revenue for the house. And so that's whether it's coming through Airbnb or coming through Furnished Finder. And then obviously we have, lawn care and utilities, and we pay for everything, right? That's how these Airbnbs work. So we got mortgage, insurance, utilities, lawn care, all that good stuff. And so right now, fairly conservatively, the house is cash flowing a little less than $1,000 a month.
Man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So $900 to $1,000 a month with zero cash in.
Yeah.
Now it took you close to $50,000 of personal cash to do that.
Yeah.
Could you or would you still have done the deal if you didn't have that $50,000?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely would have, just because I think at the end of the day, you can go find the money, right? And so we're blessed to just know tremendous people that kind of like believe in us, I guess, a little bit. And so they're like, yeah, if we didn't have the money, I felt like we could have gotten the money because I knew the deal was worth doing. At least I thought, based on my Bigger Pockets knowledge, right? But it was worth the risk to me, even if we didn't have the money. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's where it goes back to relationships so much. And if you go the private money route, having that bubble around you that trusts you and understand what you're doing. But also on the flip side of that, it's providing an opportunity. It wasn't free money.
Yeah,
I'm assuming
absolutely.
so, right? You
That's
can go
right.
to them and say, look, I know maybe I'm new at this. Maybe I don't have a ton of experience. Maybe this is kind of a riskier deal. So did you offer a pretty decent return to this private money to where they're like, hey, this is good for me, right?
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
an opportunity for that lender.
For sure. And honestly, I went to him, it was family members. And so I went to him as a cousin of mine, and I just said, hey, look, I'm going to go to a bank and pay this random bank interest, or I could go to you and pay that same interest to you and make money if you have no plan with the cash that's sitting in your bank account.
Yeah.
And so that was the approach I took. And I'm, like I said, I love spreadsheets and all this kind of stuff. So I had him a detailed amortization schedule and all this stuff, and said, here's what you're going to get paid daily, throughout the whole project. If we go over, we go under, this is how it works. Kind of gave him a whole plan. We signed a contract. We did it all legit. And so,
like recorded the note and everything with the county. Yeah.
Oh no, we
just
didn't.
Promissory note.
Yeah,
Okay.
promissory note.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we didn't record it with the county, but we basically had like a little DocuSign that we both signed.
Yeah.
And just had the whole amortization schedule and all the terms on it.
Yeah. Well, it's so good you did that up front. So the difference of what you just said and how you did that versus you going to someone saying, hey, I think I need about $200,000. Can I have it? Right.
Yeah.
But like you have your spreadsheets, you have here's the calculated numbers. Here's where I've got contingency built in. So here's the risk. Here's the set return. And here's a document binding me legally to give you this money, right? That's a whole different approach than just not really having a plan and just going to ask someone, please let me have some money, right?
Yeah.
It's providing an opportunity.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
that's, man, you talk about having a great community and great family around you, but you did a ton of work on the front end to present that opportunity. You did some work to connect with the wholesalers, and I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, especially while you're balancing 2 other jobs, right?
Yeah, part-time jobs, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I love that. So for people who, we get a lot of feedback and I get a lot of questions of Blake, I've got $10,000 or I've got $5,000 to get into it, and I hear Austin on your podcast that he's cash flowing almost $1,000 a month, but I don't have $50,000. There's a way to do it, but it started years ago, building that relationship. Of course, it's family, but if it's friends that that could lend that money to you, it's building those relationships yesterday for a potential project today.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I think you drilled it when you said, like, if you come to them with a plan, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you say, okay, here's like worst case scenario, best case scenario, here's every way that this thing could go, and just have it written out for them, don't try to lean on them with a plan. They want you to come to them with a plan, right?
Yeah.
So if you come to them with a plan and just say, hey, here's everything that's going to work, I can either use you, or I can use a bank, or I can use somebody else. It's no skin off my back if you don't want to do it. I'm just offering this opportunity to you if you want, right? And that's kind of the approach that we went.
Yeah, it's like a pitch.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's sales. At the end of the day, it just comes down to sales, which is the same across any industry.
Yeah.
You're just selling a return.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Cool. Well, I want to jump back because we touched about it for a second, but let's talk about we've got a Thursday morning mastermind. I think I've been in it about a year. Y'all had it going for maybe a year before that as well?
Yeah, I think we started it at the beginning of 22. Yeah.
Okay. So let's dive into how'd that come about, and exactly what is it? Because I love the structure, I love the consistency, the accountability. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So Todd Helzer and I are good friends, and he called me up, I guess, at the end of 21, and was like, "Hey, I'd love to do some type of group that basically just like-minded entrepreneurial type people could get together, hold each other accountable, even if they're in different industries, and just kind of have like he essentially called it like a mastermind, right? But have something like that where we're learning from each other, but we also have the accountability piece of making commitments and going that route. So I was all in. I mean, I just love any kind of group. And once again, I'm extremely extroverted, so I'm like, get me around people, let's do it.
Go.
And so yeah, we ended up starting that group and just started, dialing some people that we know to invite them to the group. And that's kind of really how it started. Is he just wanted something, and I desired it as well after he described it to me, to get together on a weekly basis and have a place to bring ideas to, but also have a place that says, I got to show up and tell these guys like what I did or didn't do the past week that I committed to the week before. So that's kind of how it all started. Yeah,
that weekly commitment standpoint really, because when you're doing, like you said, iron sharpen iron. So when you're doing that just individually, it's easier to cheat, right? But if, like, I know I've got some commitments that I've still got to work on for this coming Thursday because we wrote it down, right? And it's in there, and 6 to 8 other guys are saying, this is what Blake said he's going to accomplish by next Thursday. Yeah. So I better do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because if not, and we even talked about, maybe throwing in some penalties if you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Which we don't want to skew to have, lesser goals or lesser commitments, but really holding your feet to the fire to say, look, I'm not here to get on to you, but I'm here because I love you and your business and what you're trying to grow and support you. And so making sure that you fulfill those commitments. I love that.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, all of us are our own best salesmen in our head, right? Like, if I decide that I don't think I really have to do this week, I can sell myself on that all day long and actually not do anything, right? But when I have to actually tell the group or just tell them leaving one Thursday that, okay, before next Thursday, I'm going to do this, because that's out in the open, it holds me accountable to actually go do it. And like you said, we're not showing up on Thursdays and getting like beatings or paying $1 billion if we don't hit our commitments, right? But it's just the simple like accountability structure of saying like, these guys, I told them I was going to do it and I need to do it. And sometimes I'm doing it on Wednesday night to get it done, But that's part of the process.
So one thing I love about the group is not just the business side of it, because that's how it derived. But when I came in, there was more than that. It was y'all talking about how can we have a better life that's well-rounded and while we're not just 24/7 all business working all the time, right? Because that's unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so some of those commitments, and this is probably one of my favorite parts about what we do, is not business commitments. It's, I got to take Rachel on a date because it's been way too long, right? Yep. And she's letting me know it, right? Like we got to go out, or I need to, spend some more quality time taking Stella just one-on-one doing something, or whatever it is, like having something outside of just business to have that accountability piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because as much as I'd like to think that, no, like I've got that handled, I don't need help on that, man, I need so much help on that.
Absolutely. Because we always naturally bend towards like what we want to do, right?
Yeah.
Or like what we're interested in that season.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. I mean, there's so much more that that at the end, once you get to the end of your life and you look back on it, you're like, man, I cared a lot about that business for so long, but I ignored a lot of things that are way more valuable in this stage of life looking back than I thought was valuable in the time.
Yep.
And so really, and we talked about this a little bit in the group, but I try to boil down when I'm looking through the commitments for each week, I kind of put it into 5 different categories. But first one is, how's my relationship with the Lord? Like from a spiritual standpoint, what's my life look like in that world? How's my relationship with physically? Am I keeping up with my body? Am I eating healthy? Am I working out? How's my relationship with my spouse or family? You know, what am I doing there to like make sure that is healthy? And then the fourth one is actually rest. I think there's a big value in like actually getting true rest every week. Because I view rest almost like a slingshot, where like if you get good rest, at least like honor the Sabbath type mentality, it's going to propel you so forward into being productive or just a better overall just like achiever or just person in general for the other 6 days of the week if you do truly give that rest for that one day. And then the fifth one is business, right? But it's interesting. I mean, when you put them in that order, business is all the way at the end. And so many times when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, business, let's do business, you know?
Yeah.
But those other things are like crucial in my mind to be able to like effectively live a life that's worth living.
Yeah, that's so good. And having that order of priority is just, it's so incredibly important to have that, which I completely agree with it. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
well, cool. Well, before we wrap up, I want to talk about a couple things, but the first being book recommendations. I know you love to read, you love new concepts around business, but life in general. So would love to get 3 book recommendations that you're either reading now or that just kind of are on a top list for you.
Yeah, so the most recent one I just finished, and I'm honestly mimicking it's a playbook for small businesses. It's called How to Grow Your Small Business. It's by Donald Miller. He's the one that wrote the Story Brand concept, and so it's fantastic. It's really just like a playbook for how to structure these 6 areas of business, from cash flow to sales to marketing to all these different windows. What do you care about? And he literally gives you step by step, I mean, how to manage a team, how to run meetings, like all these things. It's similar to like a traction concept, but it's just in his own viewpoint. And I just really related to that. So that's the most recent, and I would say, top 5 business books for me, at least in the past 5 years or so. Second would be Who Not How. That's a common bond between you and I. I feel like that when we both read that book, it just opened my eyes to a whole different way of thinking about business and really life in general. I mean, from a standpoint of not all, because by nature, I'm always like an analytical thinker and want to go in and try to, problem solve or like put it on me to figure out the solution. But that book really flipped that mindset on its head to say like, no, people are skilled in unique abilities, and to be able to build a team with a bunch of unique abilities that like complement each other will make everyone's goals drastically higher than it would have been if you just try to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
So Who Not How is a fantastic book. And then let's see. Third book.
Doesn't have to be business if you got to.
I always bend towards business books. I mean, I love them. It's sad. I don't think I've read any kind of fiction books except for when I was reading like Cliff Notes in high school when we had to do book reports. Third book. I mean, the E-Myth is one that I read years ago, but E-Myth Revisited, it's basically another playbook for business and kind of how to think about how to structure processes and systems to build something that operates without you. And that's why, I mean, I feel like bond over this a good bit too, from a standpoint of like trying to invest in something so then after your time investment, it still produces and it doesn't require your time afterwards, right? And so E-Myth kind of really opened my eyes to how do you build something that can continue to grow when it doesn't require your time to grow. And the whole concept, and once again, I think many people have heard this, but can you leave your business for 6 months and it still grow without you and then come back? And it's better off than when you left before. And so that's kind of the goal that I'm trying to build right now with this new company.
I think the key word there is grow, not just maintain.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It can grow without you there. So you put those systems. And now I've never had those who, not how in the E-Myth talked about in the same sentence or sit down. But now that we're saying it, it's kind of like the same book, right? Same concepts, but E-Myth has a little bit more structure on, hey, this is actually how you implement it. And here's how you divide up those roles. Or who, not how is like, quit doing everything yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Other people want to do this for you, and they're better at it than you.
Yep.
Right. So that's funny that, and they're pretty. I don't know when they were both written. I think Who Not How's much more recent, but I think there's a good bit of years between those two books.
Oh yeah.
And I think it just goes back to prove like concepts don't change.
Yeah,
there is no
exactly
new magic button you can hit. It's just the simple process is just you got to read it and implement it.
Yep,
and
that's
stick to it
exactly
with
right.
accountability. So I love that. Well, cool. Before we wrap up, let's talk about where you're going, where you see the future. What does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you personally, for the business, and where are you headed? And, of course, your real estate journey. Is that going to grow?
Yeah, no, that's fun to talk about. I love thinking that way. From a business standpoint, obviously, the business is super fresh. We just closed on it a few months ago, and that's all I can think about right now. I love it. And so right now we are specifically in the property management space. And so that's how Phil built it out, is he came from a property management background. And so we are an outsourced accounting firm for property managers. And so one thing I've realized doing that is I want to run down that lane as hard as I can because I love the industry, love dealing with owners in that industry. But eventually, over the next, for sure, 5 years, we're going to be branching off into other service-based industries. Because at the end of the day, what I've realized about business ownership, specifically service-based industries, is business owners hate doing accounting, or they just don't like either doing it or like dealing with it, right? Mm-hmm. And accounting just needs to happen. And so I would rather get business owners focused on sales and operations and us do all of their accounting, and they just know what I see in my financials is true and accurate. We're going to deliver that to them every single month and actually work with them on tweaking, increasing cash flow, because really my heart for business owners is that I want to work with them to help them create a cash flow machine out of their business, right? And so at the end of the day, every business is business performance at the end of the day is valued on one thing, and it's financial results. And so if people's financials aren't accurate, then there's no way they can determine their performance, right? And so I want to deliver those accurate financials to them consistently so they can actually start understanding the performance, make decisions to tweak and to increase cash flow, to create this cash flow machine. Mm-hmm. So that's really my heart. So eventually I think we'll get into home service-based industries, whether it's HVAC companies or electricians or plumbers or anybody that can't stand to be behind a computer and they'd rather be out selling or, running a machine or whatever. Yeah. Then I want to help them get all of that off their plate so they can do their job so much better and just trust and know that they have a team behind them that's delivering accurate financials, because financials, once again, it's a part of a business. It's a necessary thing. It's kind of like the offensive line of a business, right? You got to have it. They got to show up and do their job consistently, move the ball down the field. And that's kind of what I want to do for business owners.
Okay. And is this for Johnny in a one-man truck electrician, or is this for a national scale size company or somewhere in between there?
It's really for everybody, but it caters more towards small to medium-sized businesses. Okay. And the reason I say that is when you get into that large-scale business, you can justify bringing a whole accounting department in-house if you want to go that route. Like once you get into that, on the larger scale, you probably can afford a $200,000 a year CFO, and you probably can't afford like a controller and all these people that bring into the equation like an accounts payable and receivable and all these things we do for people now. Mm-hmm. But once again, if people want to stay with us and grow to that scale, we can grow with them to that scale, because we have a whole team of people that can come in and supply what you need no matter what size business you are. Okay. But it just tends to, I think, when you get to that scale, people want to have internal like leadership people on their team, mm-hmm. like a CFO. And so I think once they get to that scale, that's when they start hiring internally. But from, Joe Blow in a truck to a medium to even a large size business, we can do any of that.
I love that. Yeah. Real estate growth. What, if there's any in the future, what does it look like?
I'm still always interested. And, it's funny. I don't want to have shiny object syndrome. I have to fall guilty of that all the time. And so For me, the business right now is what I want to put my focus on a ton. And I don't want to be too distracted by just like looking at deals and thinking about, oh man, we could go buy this property or this piece of land or all these other things. But I'm always intrigued by it. And so especially now that I saw that the Irondale house actually worked, right? I went from never doing real estate to doing a house, and the thing actually worked. That it
Very well.
and
That's
yeah.
$1,000 a month is nothing to shy
Yeah,
away from.
exactly.
That's
And
good.
so it makes it, obviously I'm very intrigued by that. And I really do love the Airbnb space. And so I think our next project, don't know when that's going to come or what location it's going to be, but will be a true Airbnb where they're staying 1 night, 2 night, 3 nights versus a 30-night minimum stay. And just kind of honestly just want to see how does that work compared to the Irondale house and see, is there more of a profit there? Is there less of a profit there, between the systems and processes and build it out? Because that's really what I lean to. And that's why I love the Airbnb space, is because you can develop that whole model with systems and processes. And that's what I try to do in our business, right? That's what I naturally gravitate to, is like creating businesses and processes to kind of that E-Myth solution type deal. And I think you can do that in Airbnb space, and that's what attracted me to it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, if you decide to look on the lake, I've got that one I'm flipping. I'll
That's
be happy
right.
to sell it to you. Well, cool. Well, thank you
love
so
it.
much for being here.
Yeah.
If people want to learn more about you and your business, where should we send them?
Well, I need to learn from you, Blake, because I'm not on any social media. But my email address, I guess, is the best place to. We're building out a website right now. We just rebranded the business.
And we hadn't talked about the name. So what's
the Flywheel Financial is the name of the
Flywheel
business.
Financial?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we know a website name?
It's going to be flywheel.financial.
Okay.
Yep. So eventually, in the next few months, that'll be up and running.
Okay.
Nothing on there right now. So really, my email address is austin@flywheel.financial. And so if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me anytime. But
cool.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Put that in
This
the
is
show
great.
notes, but thank you for being here, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.